Welcome back to another episode of the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast. This is Rand, and in today's episode I'm joined by a special guest to talk about one of the most prominent homebrew mods of Twilight Imperium, the Absol Mod. But before we get to that, let's recap this past weekend's Stooge for the Throne tournament game. I have here with me the resident junkie from Game 1, who was also the winner. Welcome, Kevin, aka Drago Thaxton.
Hello, here we are. Oh boy, that was a good one.
How does it feel?
It feels great, but I will say, sadly, I only seem to win junky things when it's an online thing, and I really still striving for that IRL win with the junkies. But we'll take a win when we get one, especially a 55.6 hour game. That is incredible.
It was an epic game to kick off the tournament. It was entertaining from moment one to the final moment. There was stoogery, there was stooge mastery, and that's kind of what I want to talk about in this recap. Do you have any favorite stooging moments from any of the players or yourself in this game?
I do feel, so no shots against Big Al, but I feel like he self-stooges. And at times, and I only say that, Big Al, and I love you, because unbeknownst to me, I'm going to get an RA deal, things like that. Things that are off-tempo, but they make sense because he's making money and he's looking to make money. So, and I very well could have ended up being the stooge there just as much as him. And because getting Magion about a round earlier due to impromptu research agreement is the bee's knees. That's for sure.
As Nathan would say, he gave you too much value, huh?
And I think I got it for $1 up front and $1 later, if I remember right.
Dang. That does sound like a stoogey deal.
Yeah. Other than that, I think I stooged. I derped. That's for sure. My Mechatol play was a big old derp in round 4 for popping Imperial for an action phase win. Had a dread with me and would have been probably the sealing deal. And then thought, no, you got to keep that back for that secret you got to score too. And ended up losing a combat that was 2 carriers and a fighter versus 1 carrier. Also due to me discarding a shield holding at some point prior. So just big dirt.
Ironically, I was telling Nathan this when we were commentating. In that moment, I remembered you last year in last year's Stooge tournament, and you kind of had an opposite big turning moment in which you took an extra dread to a battle, and leaving yourself thin is what sealed your deal and cost you the game in the end.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the opposite. You had to bring that extra dread, but you did not.
I was Yssaril in that game too, actually, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I seem to be Yssaril in all of these games.
So it worked out this time.
It worked out great this time.
I actually have my own favorite stooge moment, and it was very early in the game.
Oh, yeah?
Round 1, agenda phase. Minister of Policy comes up.
Oh.
You had sold speaker to your right to the Nalu, and I remember being bummed out for you, how's Yssaril gonna get this as first to vote? And so you put in your votes, and then other people put in votes to negate that, and then come the speaker, Nalu was like, yeah, I kind of just want Yssaril to have this, and put in some votes to sway it your way, and that was beautiful, because that's the best minister for Yssaril.
It was honestly beautiful, and I can take no real credit for that other than the moment I kind of saw it and I wanted it. Weaver whispered me and says, I'm gonna vote for you. And so immediately I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's real or not yet. So I just start trying to buy other people's votes to sure it up. And that's when I offered Patty Horseplay to my left, hey, I'll give you the first pick that I sold to get your votes.
Which was an awesome deal, by the way. I thought that was really cool when you offered that.
I feel like that's unique. I've never seen that. I feel like, I don't know.
Same. I was really impressed.
And then when it got to him, Weaver, he didn't ask for anything for those votes, but I just kind of messaged him and said, hey, in good faith, so it doesn't look like a total stoogery, I'll just let you have first pick, free reign. And he took the thing I would have probably taken. I probably would have taken politics. So he did the right thing by keeping it and then moving it around the horn.
See, here's actually a secret about stooging. When done correctly, it can pay off, just like that.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's very true. Weaver was a great, I hate to call him a stooge because he had a strong win himself, but there was a lot of stoogery. We were doing deals around that last PDS that I took there for the win. though I had backup options, he came through. I was really not trying to take that PDS and was going to aim for Obi-Wan's space dock, but in the end, he diploed that, and then my option only became Aang, and Weaver was like, hey, Aang's still available, and I was like, love it. Let's go. I'm all here for it.
I love Infiltrate for a Yssaril win, too. That's just so poetic.
And he gave it to me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Stoogery. Top stoogery.
I was going to have to Meiji on him. And then I was like, oh, I'll play my hero. And then he immediately was like, here's Infiltrate. And I was like, oh, well, saving me the time.
I love that. To the future stooges of this tournament, you have a high bar to follow. I mean, the stooge bar has been set high. Weaver's done good stooging this weekend, so will you do the same?
I think the pendulum has to swing back pretty hard with how much luck I was given here. Everyone's failure at the heart of the cards on those secrets draws to let me have the win on the 8 in round 4 status. I think the heart of the cards luck is going to swing back pretty hard for the finals. But hey, I'm going to be there. That's all that matters.
That's true. You'll be there. Next week we have Nathan playing. Will he join you in the ranks of finalists?
Ooh.
We'll find out.
I'm excited to see how him and Walt interact after our last IRL game, which no spoilers on that because I think that's going to be coming up. But Walt and Nate have a very interesting rapport, I'll call it, and it'll be great. It'll be great.
Yes, be sure to check that dynamic out in the upcoming episode of the TI Junkies series. And thank you, Kevin, for joining me today. Good luck to you in the final. And now, let's transition to today's topic. I have a special guest on here to talk about the Absol Mod, a homebrew mod. We have Absol herself. Welcome, Absol.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be on your show with you.
Very excited to have you and to talk about this. I personally have only gotten to play once with the mod. Kevin brought Absol's agendas and relics, so we're trying that out for the first time. Should be spicy. Love some spice.
These people don't know what they're in for, I'll tell you that. It's spice on a level of... It's spice. You don't vote, you're going to get hit with something. You vote the most, you get an extra benefit.
It is very popular, and I know people are curious about it. And I wanted to start our chat today asking you about how this came to be. I know the rulebook for the mod has some backstory on how this happened, but for anyone who hasn't gotten a chance to see that, how did this start?
Yep. So basically, a lot of it comes down to the Space Cats, Peace Turtles boys. I first got into the bigger Twilight Imperium community through them, and I was listening to one of their episodes about the agenda phase, and it was probably a combination of that and just general conversation about the agenda phase being boring, doesn't really affect much in the game. People, the way players interact with it is mostly how can we get through this doing the least amount possible. And so basically everybody abstains, the speaker breaks for the thing that does nothing, and then everybody does it again, and then we're done. So I was like, I don't like that. The agenda phase is one of those things in Twilight Imperium that's one of the really cool, draws. It's like, oh, you vote to change the rules of the game. And in the lore of Twilight Imperium, the agenda phase is really important. It's the Galactic Council enacting laws that all the factions, except for a couple, have to follow. And so I was like, okay, let's try to amp it up so that it's actually important and engaging. And then after a few iterations of that, I added in Relics, because that was another deck that, once again, is like, okay, most of the relics actually suck, except for these one or two that give you points that you actually want to find. And then there were a couple other issues. And then the most recent iterations have included an attempt to rebalance the text as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very relatable feeling about the agenda phase, because even I myself, there are maybe 5 tops agendas and I'm like, I want these, and if it's not these, I really, really don't care. Checks and balances, representative government, which is funny because that one is changing how you vote. So it's I want that, but then I also want the 3 other agendas that are super spicy, like Seed and Mutiny. But yeah, with the Absol agendas, they are all very consequential. And even the amount you vote makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the big things I wanted to do, because in the way most people handle the agenda phase with the base agenda cards is if it passes and the table can mostly like decide before anyone votes, yeah, we want this to go for, we want this to go against. It doesn't matter if you cast one vote or if you cast no votes. And oftentimes casting no votes just lets you get out scot-free from the consequences that are supposed to be built into the agenda. And so I was like, well, that's no fun. So let's encourage people to vote by saying whoever votes the most gets an extra benefit. And also we wrapped in, if you abstain, you can still abstain. That's still a choice you can make. But you're going to get wrapped into whichever way it ended up going. So most of the time it's, if it passes, the people who, this happens, and the person who voted the most for gets something. If it goes against, something happens to the people who voted against and to the people who abstained. So that abstaining is still a choice, but it's an actual choice.
Yeah. And I like how it balances the speaker's power because, like you described earlier, the first agenda especially is usually just, okay, the speaker's going to decide because if it's not important, no one's going to vote.
Yep. And another thing I did about that is if nobody votes, including the speaker, the speaker is considered to be the person who casts the most votes. So the speaker, if everybody just continues to abstain, whoever speaker is just going to get more and more extra benefits.
That's very true.
So it incentivizes the rest of the table to not just go along blindly because they're just going to be handing a bunch of stuff to the speaker who's already getting a bunch of stuff from being speaker.
Yeah, which speaking of speaker, in the TI Junkies episode where we used the Absol Mod season 3 finale, we had a crazy speaker agenda. And I think it's different in the current version.
Yes, term limits, I believe it was.
Yes, term limits, which I kind of want to read what it was because it blew our minds.
Yeah.
And it was the longest agenda we've ever had in a great way for some people. For some people, they were like, no, I get it. But, we had a new player at the table, too. So it was a lot of.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, she ended up winning.
That's true. It's very true. And she was the speaker when term limits came up, actually. So that's why there was a lot of explanation because she was like, wait, what happens to me? So here it is, term limits. And I'm only going to read the 4. I'm not even going to get into the against.
Yeah.
4. The player who casts the most votes for takes the speaker token. When resolving an agenda, if the agenda resolves in the way the speaker voted or predicted, or if the speaker broke a tie to choose the resolution, the other player who cast the most votes for an outcome that was not resolved takes the speaker token.
Yeah. So that was a really wild one. That's another one of the mini sort of goals that I kind of had was sort of break up speaker control. So you can take speaker, but multiple agendas play with the speaker token, so you're not guaranteed to be able to keep it all the way through the agenda phase. It's basically to make like the people who end up, in the mid game in horrible speaker position have a chance to actually get back in the late game if they get a good agenda. But yeah, that one got reworked. So that was the Absol Mod version 3 version of that. It's significantly different now. The 4 is now, the speaker places one of their control tokens on this card. When a player takes or receives the speaker token, they place one of their control tokens on this card. A player whose control token is on this card cannot take or receive the speaker token. If a control token from each player is on this card, remove them all. So it's basically just, until everybody's been speaker, you can't be speaker again.
Yeah, that like nullifies the speaker hogging game, which gives everyone a chance, like you said. That kind of like really opens up the field of like, oh, I'm behind, but that's okay because those people in the lead are never going to see the speaker token,
Yep.
And I don't have enough experience with these agendas to say, but from what I've seen, I feel more comfortable selling the speaker token using the Absol mod than in just regular TI because I always feel like selling the speaker token when like in the previous format we discussed of like, and then speaker breaks the tie. It's like you're also giving away this tiny thing of like, the little difference you might make, you actually can't make, and you're just gonna abstain, and the person you sold it to is gonna make.
Yeah.
But here it's like, well, everyone's voting anyway, so there's no There's no shenanigans like that.
Exactly.
Something else about the agendas.
Yeah.
The 4 cards, emergency sessions.
So emergency session was kind of my idea for another major issue, which the major issue was everybody abstains or spends all but one vote on the first agenda, and then spends all of their votes on the second agenda because they know the agenda phase is ending. Emergency session is my idea on how to sort of play and fiddle with the length of the agenda phase. So when an emergency session is revealed, it just goes to the common play area, revealed through any means. And then in the next agenda phase, you do one additional agenda per emergency session that's out there. So usually this just ends up being every once in a while you have an agenda phase with 3 agendas. But if you get a really weird deck stacking, you can potentially have 6 agendas. 2 normal plus 4 emergency sessions in one agenda phase.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Have you ever seen that? Has it happened?
I have not seen it. And technically, you can have to vote 8 times in one agenda phase because you have your 6 agendas, 2 normal, 4 emergency session. New Constitution has you vote on a law from the bottom of the deck if it goes 4. So if you pass New Constitution, draw a law from the bottom of the deck, you have to vote on that too. And then, of course, Miscount Disclosed is you vote for a law to re-vote on, and then you have to vote on that law. So you could technically have to vote 8 times in one agenda phase.
That is so amazing.
I would love to see it. I have not seen
I
it.
kind of just want to simulate that. Like, forget the game. Let's just simulate one agenda phase. Just like stack it like that.
Those poor counselors, they're there for like 48 hours straight.
Yeah. 8 agendas. It's like, what if you have one influence? Because, that's just where you're at. You're like, I'm going to save it for the 7th agenda.
Well, you got to save it until you find the one that's really important.
Yeah, but aren't they all?
Hopefully it's one that gives you benefit for voting for.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not getting any most votes unless you've got somebody's political secret, which is the only promissory note I've adjusted. Because the agenda phase is so much different and number of votes matters, I changed it to be when you cast votes, you may exhaust up to 3 of the color players' planets and cast votes as if you controlled the exhausted planets. You may cast votes this way even if you are otherwise unable to vote, which means you can play a writer, and then if you've got someone's political secret, you can still cast votes with up to 3 of their planets, meaning you can sway your writer a little bit, but also helped you get those most votes bonuses by giving you more votes and taking votes away from your opponent.
That's really awesome because, the regular political secret only hinders, but you're like, okay, well, there's still 4 other people voting, so boo-hoo. But this one, you kind of get a little boost too, so you have more sway.
Yep.
I love it. So I was skimming through agendas that I didn't have the pleasure of experiencing in that game, and one I loved was Divine Affirmation, which is like reversing custodians.
Yeah, the affirmation of divine right. So we won't read it verbatim, but in brief, the 4 is Mechatol Rex becomes legendary, and every strategy phase, everybody else has to give the person who has Mechatol a promissory note because their divine right has been affirmed. If it goes against, it exhausts the Imperial strategy card, which is a new mechanic I introduced with this. These strategy cards can start the round exhausted, which means nobody can use them that round. But it also still goes into play as a law, even though you voted against. And the way you mark that is you take the Custodian's token from whoever had it and put it on the Affirmation of Divine Right. That person loses a point, and players can't get victory points from Imperial anymore because the council has voted that the person who controls Mechatol Rex does not have a divine right to rule. So why should we give them any more, boost towards being the next emperor?
I love how story-based this one is.
Oh yeah, the entirety of Absol Mod is based entirely in TI lore. That was one of my main drivers is I want to make these things better, but because I'm the TI lore nerd, it needs to stay consistent with the setting.
And that's awesome. Well, then explain to me the against of checks and balances. Because that one is also just purely wild.
Well, in a political system, if there are no checks and balances, people can just do whatever random stuff they want. And so if, the entire council votes against checks and balances, people can just keep doing the same thing over and over to prove that they're worthy of being the next emperor.
That's fair.
We should explain what it actually does for the people who don't know. The 4 remains basically the same, except the person who casts the most votes for gets a one-time opportunity to keep a strategy card instead of having to give one away. The against is remove all control tokens from public objectives and shuffle all scored secret objectives back into the deck. Players do not gain or lose victory points as a result of this.
It's just like, go again. Good luck.
It's just chaos.
But continue where you are still also, so.
Yeah. So if somebody scored all 3 of their secrets, they really want that to go against, because then they can just score 3 more.
I want that. I want to experience against checks and balances. Checks and balances is one of my favorite vanilla agendas when it goes for. But this, I would want to see this go against, just because, wow.
Yeah. You also have to kind of balance it, because if, your main rival who's about to win if there's a really easy, 1-point public that they've already scored, now they can score it again. That might be really easy for them.
Yeah. Oh, it's moments like those. It's like play to win or see all the objectives the secrets get shuffled back in, tokens get removed.
Yep.
So do you have any like favorite of these agendas? Do you have, your pride and joys?
I am really fond of the against on checks and balances. I thought that was a lot of fun. I'm really bad at picking favorites, by the way.
That's fair. You don't have to. I don't mean to make you pick your favorites, because they're all interesting and special, and probably context means a lot.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of what I did with the ministers. So each minister, they get to use the secondary of a strategy card without spending a token, and then they get another effect. I think I have to go with mutiny, though. So mutiny in the normal, the normal agenda deck is not at all like an actual mutiny in the government. It's everybody's like, oh yeah, let's all just get a point. We'll all just vote for, right? Yeah. Okay, we'll all just get a point. That is not how an actual mutiny would go. Mutinies are violent, messy things, and only some people come out on top. So I made it so that it's violent and messy, and you can't all get points. So if it goes 4, the politics card, strategy card, is exhausted, so speaker's not moving. The player who casts the most votes takes the speaker token, so whoever was the most mutinous becomes the new speaker. All players who voted for gain a victory point, that's the same. But if all players voted for, the speaker gains an additional point.
Oof.
Yeah, you're like, okay, well, we'll just go against. Against is each player who voted for loses a victory point and must give the speaker a promissory note. Then, if all players voted against or abstained, the speaker and the other player who cast the most votes against gain a victory point. So it's either the 2 people gain 1 victory point, or everybody who voted for loses a victory point. There's no possible way for every player to come out the same.
No more just speeding up the game for the sake of speeding up the game.
Yep, exactly.
I love that. Let's talk about the relics some. What's the relic, the new one?
Da, 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 da. When you would spend a token from your strategy pool, you may exhaust this card to spend a token from your reinforcements instead.
As an action.
Purchase this card, ready your strategy card.
Oh,
wow.
shoot.
Ooh, that's spicy.
That is spicy. Those are also really fun, and like you said, every single one kind of has a huge impact, and there isn't a relic. There's no like Thalnos draw. Oh man, this is nothing. They all have either modified text or an additional purge ability, all except the obsidian, right?
Yeah, obsidian was
exactly the same.
Universally agreed to be the best, so I'm like, no need to change perfection. But that was something really big I wanted to do with the relic. So the prevailing view of the relic deck was, like I said, there's only a couple you really want to get, and you really want to wait to the end game so that the few that you do get that matter, like Shard, the longer you wait, the less chance your opponents have to take it from you. Mm-hmm. But of course, all of the relics that are designed to have passive effects throughout the game then become essentially useless because you're taking them as late as possible. You don't really have the multiple rounds to use those passive effects. So I was basing it kind of off the Dynamis core, or Dynamis core if I pronounce it correctly. which has a passive effect and then a purge effect for late game. So I was trying to go for, even if it's not the exact relic you wanted, any relic you draw is probably going to be useful to you. And it's got an effect you can use throughout the game if you draw it early, and a late game effect to if you draw it late, or just to give you a nice little boost there at the end.
Yeah. The TI Junkies game we played with them, the win, when Jenny got the win using 2 of those purge abilities, which the first one was Prophet's Tears, and the purge ability was to research 2 techs, and there was a tech objective out. And then the other one, which this is, I don't know if this is the most OP one in your opinion, but the Scepter of Emelpar, which lets you ready a strategy card.
Yeah.
So she was able to ready Imperial and get the win right then and there.
Yep.
While everyone else was like plotting to slay people who had like not anyone but her, because this was just like so perfectly landed in like, this is a Absol Relic win for sure.
Yep.
I won TI for the first time. This is the first time.
She won thanks to the Absol Relics.
If I were to purge those 2, I would get 2 technology, which then would cause me to have technology upgrade.
She needed 1 more unit upgrade, no one picked tech.
And then using the relic to ready the strategy card,
Which will allow me to pop again so I don't have to wait for status phase. It's kind of crazy. I actually know what I'm talking about, and this is only my 3rd game. I know I keep saying this is my 3rd game, but it's just, TI is a lot of information. With the Scepter of Imperium, I can't even pronounce it, I'm going to activate Imperial for the 2nd time this round, and 2 technology. So now
2 unit upgrades.
I
For the
move
10
this
port.
2 10 points.
Wow. Absol, you got her this win.
So I have nerfed the Scepter of Emelpar in version 4 just a little bit. Now the purge effect also requires you to spend a strategy token, which if you haven't used the exhaust effect for that round, you can use the exhaust effect for it. But it does have a little bit of an extra cost to ready your strategy card again.
3 influence to win the game. The cost.
Oh yeah. How will you ever afford it?
You know, I want to see the Winnu draw this scepter. I want to see the Winnu draw it, and I want to see them have Imperial, and I want to see them get Custodians, and I want to see them win in like round 2.
I mean, it's technically possible, but then of course they're just going to get punched even more than they already do.
I mean, come on. No one wants to see a beautiful thing these days. And, something else that's really notable about these relics is that there's 3 Shard of the Thrones.
Yes.
So that's 3 guacs that can be bouncing around, that could be shared by the same person / planet.
Yep. If you have multiple shards and somebody takes one of your planet, legendary or home planets, they still only take 1. They don't take all of them. But a lot of people see that there's 3 shards and they're like, that makes me nervous. NRA is going to get all of them. The ratio of cards that give you points is exactly the same. So there were 13 relics. There's 13 relics in the normal deck. There's 20 here. There were, I want to say it's 3 cards out of the 13, which is about 25%, that give you points. And now there's 5 out of 20, which is 25%. So the chance of getting points is almost exactly the same.
Very interesting. It still would be nice to play NRA in one of these games because dig, enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, Async has gotten a whole bunch of games using Absol Mod, and so lots of people have played NRA, and so far there have not been any major problems. So if you're thinking about it and you're like, oh, that sounds kind of powerful, don't worry about it.
Good to know. Well, what about the relics? Do you have favorites of those?
Yes. So I'm a big fan of the relic units. There's 2 of them that are relic units. And my favorite of those is the Tyrant's Lament, which is a secondary, just big ship that you can deploy and have roving around the board. It's often called like a relic flagship. It's not technically a flagship. It's an untyped ship, but usually you just use a unused player color flagship to represent it because it's a big ship. You can put it out at the end of your turn anywhere you've got ships, and then it's just a big bruiser. It's got move 2, combat 5x3, space cannon 5x3, anti-fighter barrage 5x3. But it's not affected by your technologies or faction abilities. So you can't install your own tech on it. You can't crew it with your own people. It's just this random mystery ship that goes around fighting, and it just happens to be fighting on your side right now. Nobody knows why.
It is a really powerful ship. I remember seeing it in the recent Ventura episode. Kevin Drago got that, and it did deter another player from even like looking at that home system.
We're doing these homebrew relics, like I said last time, and I got one that's get an extra flagship. I think it's Tyrant's Lament.
Tyrant's Lament flagship from a relic? That thing's terrifying. He's gonna be my friend.
2 flagships.
And I can bring
Impossible!
pivoted the next turn to try to take an RA system. He had 2 flagships marked over it.
I remember looking at those abilities and being like, that's like 4 powerful flagships combined. That is a beast of a ship.
Yep. But if it dies, it's gone forever. It pieces out and it'll show up again, a couple 100 years from now.
Dang it, YOLOs. You don't want it next to the van.
Exactly. It's probably going to get a little bit of an overhaul when version 5 comes out, which is probably going to be after this mysterious box shape thing, whatever that happens to be. But because I don't want what Kevin was doing was he just deployed it in his home system and it just stayed there the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that to be the way it works. I want people to actually like deploy it and send it out and have it go do things. And so the permanently dying when it gets blown up kind of makes the most rational way to use it is to just use it defensively. So I'm going to need to rework that.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas on how that's going to go?
I had a couple. I've been bantering with the people who helped me out on the mod, which, gotta say, massive shout out to all the people who helped me with the assets and with, going over ideas and with rules issues and all that. Everybody in the homebrew Discord who's been helping me out with this mod, thank you so much.
Let's go, squad.
Yep, exactly. Don't have anything concrete, but we'll figure something out eventually.
Yeah, you'll get there. I have a question. Do you only play with the Absol Mod or do you ever play Vanilla TI?
So, bit of a secret is I barely ever play TI. I just don't have enough time. I recently got married, and even before then,
Congratulations.
I've got, thank you. I've got a full-time job, and I've got so many projects and ideas that I'm working on that I just rarely have time. I actually play regular TI more often just because when I'm going to play, it's usually within a tournament or it's with the SCPT boys and they're needing to do something specific for an episode. So I have played 1 or 2 Absol Mod games, but most of the playtesting for the mod comes from async and from a couple players who are really dedicated to playtesting it and finding all the little flaws.
Wow, when this idea first came to you, did you expect it to become so widespread and used and just like such a big...
Yeah, I'd hope so. But really, I didn't think it would. I guess that just goes to people like the theme of TI, and I'm sticking with the theme like 100%. And that just shows that these specific decks are areas where improvement was needed. And even though some people do definitely say I've overtuned some things, and I agree at least to an extent, but that can be fixed in the future. And I get a whole bunch of people messaging me on Discord, on various servers or things just saying, I really like your mod. And that's really the point. It's playing it to increase the fun that we're all having with this game we love.
Yeah, that's awesome. So at what point did the text get added?
So text got added in version 3. So version 1 was just the agendas. Version 2 was agendas and relics. And then after I had done that, I adjusted the agendas a little bit, added in relics. I was like, okay, agendas and relics, those were the 2 decks that, we knew needed the most adjustment. Version 3, I'm like, all right, it's time. I've got some practice at this whole homebrew thing. Let's try to tackle the technologies. And so my goals with the technologies, and technically the technologies also includes a couple of changes to mechs. So which is why I call that little addition from version 3 the techs and mechs edition, was, okay, let's make it so that every tech color is a viable tech path. I want to make it so that every technology is something that people will want to research in at least some circumstances. And I wanted to decrease the, just utter dominance of blue tech, but also people keep going blue because they want to get places. So I also knew I needed to add preferably movement, but that's really difficult with the theme of the different tech colors. So I try to say add positioning abilities that help you get units into good position, even if it's not extra movement, to try and help offset some of the lost movement from the downgraded blue. And then also using it to sort of rebalance some of the factions by adjusting their faction techs and their mechs. Some people say I did a good job. Some people say I didn't. But surprisingly, green was the most difficult one to balance because everybody was beforehand it's like, oh, green tech is really bad. And then so I made it good and I made it way too good. And so in version 4, we've pulled it back again and it still might be a little bit too strong. So we'll have to look at that and readjust it a bit more in version 5.
Yeah, so quick, you heard it here. Get your Absol Mod games in, get your green tech researches in before they're nerfed, because that's the way to win now. So from your days of, when you had more TI time, do you have any stories from playing Absol Mod of like, wow, this is exactly what I was hoping to achieve, this level of spice, drama, we TI junkies love the spice and the stories and the drama. Do you have any stories to share before we end our talk today?
Yeah, so I was not playing in this game. It was an async game, but a player came to me and he said he was having a really fun time using the sling relay. And sling relay is one of those ones where it was really difficult to come up with an effect that I liked for it. But the current effect is basically your space docks can produce in adjacent systems, but they're limited to production 1. But he was like, I was doing this, I picked it up just on a whim, and I've been doing these cool things where I've been slinging destroyers into empty systems as gum, and then I, went to Mechatol, but because I had an adjacent space dock, when I took it over, I also slung a dread over it to protect myself. And it was like, yes, those are the types of plays that was meant to help facilitate is, just getting those ships just a little bit further out and in those, cool, like, oh, this newly built dreadnought was just whipped into space and it came parked over Mechatol Rex just as the carrier got there. And now the carrier's got extra protection.
Oh, that's so fun. That's so fun. It's like, oh, I'm planning that in advance. If I get in an Absol tech game and I'm going to Mechatol, I love Mechatol. So yeah, what other techs should I be getting if I'm trying to get Mechatol in my next Absol game?
You're trying to get Mechatol. Well, if you're trying to keep it, Mage and Defense Grid is pretty good. It lets you produce 1 hit per structure on a planet at the start of ground combat. So you can potentially, do some good hits up front. But also, after you perform a tactical action, you can spend 4 Reeses to place a structure on a planet you control in the active system. So you can beef up Mechatol with structures without needing construction.
I love that. Is there a Absol Agenda version of the having unlimited PDS on a planet?
So, yes. So I didn't remove any cards from any of the decks. I just added a couple to the agendas and the relics. That one still exists, but it doesn't allow for infinite PDS. It's whenever you place a PDS, you can place 2. So.
Ah, that's nice. That's cool. I was wondering if there's a crazy combo with infinite PDS and Mage Imagine Defense Grid of like, come at me, 10 hits, start of combat. Any other stories to share?
There is the crazy story of when I was first learning TI back in TI3 in college. The last game my group played together was because one of the players got so upset he pulled a knife on everybody else.
Oh my god.
And so we're like, maybe this isn't the best game to play with people who are, kind of prone to expressing anger like that.
Who carry knives to the board game day. Oh my god, that's crazy. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Absol, so much for joining me today and talking about these agendas, the relics, the text, the spice, the drama. There will be the link to the rulebook and version 4 of the Absol mod in the show notes, so check that out.
And I'm working on trying to find someone who might be willing to be the official provider of, printed versions. Don't know if that's something that anybody would really want to do because in theory it would mean maintaining a big stock and then once things change, if it hasn't all sold out, then that's lost money. So, and I understand that. But so it might just have to end up being you going to make playing cards or something like that to if you want printed versions. But there's also somebody who's helping me make a print and play, which is more just, print it out in printer paper and slide them into your card sleeves or something like that. But there are a couple different options if you want physical copies, and it's fully integrated into the Async TI bot. So if you want to try it out in Async, you can do that. And version 4 is not updated in TTS and TTPG yet, but after a couple last minute changes, we are going to be sending it to the people who are curating those platforms, and we should be updated pretty soon. So yeah.
Beautiful. These are the ways you can play Absol Mod. I personally would like to get some more games in, so hit me up, those of you out there who want to start an async. Hopefully by the time this has released, one of my games has wrapped because I'm way at capacity. But next game, Absol Mod, we're doing it. Come through.
I would join you, but I've tried async a couple times and it just doesn't work with my brain. So unfortunately, that's something I have to leave by the way.
Not for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks again, Absol, and catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Rand.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast.
If you like what we do and want to support the show, check out our Patreon, where amongst other things, you can vote on topics for future episodes.
Keep up with the TI Junkies series by subscribing on YouTube.
Until next time, keep stooging, or maybe don't.
Unless you're my stooge.